Great. Hey, good evening, everyone. Hopefully I'm not having tech issues on this side, but welcome to the annual AVLS business meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order.
So just a couple logistical items for us this evening. First, want to remind everybody the AVLS Annual Congress is next week. If you're not signed up as of yet, you can go to avlscongress.org, get registered for this great event. We've got a lot of activities, different things going on. When you go to there as well, you can look at the program, and you're going to find we have a series of other business related activities, section meetings, Monday, Tuesday next week. Wednesday evening, we have our advocacy session where you can learn a lot about the advocacy efforts going on within the society. These are all free to attend. Go to webinars and hope you'll register and be part of those as well. Through this webinar, if questions arise as you're listening to the different presentations, you should have a little bar similar to what's right here. You'll see a question area in there, and you'll be able to type in your questions. And when those questions comes through, I'll be looking at those and providing answers either directly or asking those questions to our various speakers. As Marlon said, we're grateful for our sponsors. And Marlon, I believe you had a couple comments you wanted to add before we got into our reports this evening.
Thank you, Dean. And absolutely, if you're not aware of Juzo, Juzo has been one of the premier stocking companies that has supported our society and the foundation since its inception, supporting the various research and advocacy and as well as educational programs of our society. Anna Rose, Tom, and their team have always been an integral part of our meetings, and although we're not in person, you can still feel their presence. And I just want to thank them for their ongoing support and for their great partnership. Thank you very much, Juzo. And I guess it's back to you, Dean.
All right, and so we'll get started with the various reports that we'd like to present this evening. And we're going to start with Satish Vayavegula, who is the chair of our membership standing committee, to give us an update on what's going on in our membership.
All right. So just going to give an overview of our membership as it stands currently. The AVLS has seen steady growth until the COVID-19 pandemic emerged. So as you can see, we've continued to increase all the way up until March. Once the pandemic hit the United States, we started to see a decrease in our membership numbers. June and July are by far our biggest renewal months, where we usually have over 500 members up for renewal. This year, we experienced a significant drop of nearly 100 members during this time as a result of the pandemic. Now, we're confident that many of these members that have dropped will reactivate their memberships once business resumes as normal. Now, one of the good news stories is that with the emergence of the virtual annual Congress, we've experienced a strong increase in the new members and the member activations, which you can see here. Coming up, I'm sorry, I just lost my presentation. As you can see, starting in July, August, and September, we've had a steady increase back in membership, and that's attributable to the virtual annual Congress. Now, while we hope to maintain what we've experienced over the last few months, we realize that this pandemic will still continue on into 2021, and it will continue to affect our membership numbers. One of the things that we're doing to try to increase memberships that we're rolling out in 2021 is a new organizational membership offering, which incentivizes organizations to join as a group and receive additional benefits and significant savings. So we'll continue to come up with new ways to increase our memberships, and hopefully with 2021 and the recovery as we come out of this pandemic, we'll continue to get back to the levels we were pre-pandemic and then continue to increase on those levels year over year. Who are our members by the type of people that are in it? We're predominantly physicians. 60% of our members are physician members. We do have a very strong allied health portion of our membership at 22%, and this includes nurses, nurse practitioners, sonographers, therapists, physician assistants, and administrators. We've maintained a very steady international membership at 10% year over year, and we have the other category of 8% includes retired physicians, honorary members, residents, and fellows. Who comprises our membership by specialty? It's divided with vascular surgeons make up 23%. Then we have cardiology and radiology. General surgeons make up 15% of our specialists. Family and general practice is about 8%. Dermatologists are about 5%. About 15% that didn't list their primary specialty. And then the 13% of the other include specialties such as emergency medicine and other such specialties. What are the demographics by gender and age of our membership? Most of our members are predominantly male. More than 2/3 of our members are male. But we've had a steady increase in our female membership over the last few years, and it's currently at 31%. We must credit a lot of this work to our female leadership and the work that they've done, especially through the ultrasonography and lymphatic and integumentary rehabilitation specialty sections. So great job to the leaders in those fields for increasing our membership. The average age of our members is 54, consistent with many other nonprofit medical specialty societies. This slide here shows the number of years that our members have been with the society. We're considered a relatively veteran organization, with the average member being with AVLS for more than 9 years. One thing, though, to point out is that 1/3 of our membership has been with us for less than 4 years. So these are newer members, and they bring with them a fresh perspective, and they give us the opportunity to learn from them on how we can evolve in the future and continue to gain new members as well as younger members. And finally, the last couple slides, I want to introduce our 2 new fellows to the AVLS. Fellows of the AVLS are recognized for their substantial commitment and contribution to the specialty of venous disease treatment and care. Their commitment to the field is shown through volunteerism, authored publications, education, years of practice, leadership, and any other quality or behavior that leads to the advancement of vein care. So first, we'd like to congratulate Mark Meisner and Kathy Gibson for their attainment of AVLS Fellow status. Dr. Meisner, as you all are aware, is our incoming AVLS president and has served many roles within the society, including on the board of directors, Guidelines Advisory Committee, Phlebology Forum Editorial Board, among others. It would take a long time to list all the different activities in which Mark has been able to help our society. Thank you for your strong work and contributions. And Dr. Gibson, Dr. Kathleen Gibson, currently serves as the secretary on the AVLS Board of Directors. In addition, she chairs the AVLS Bylaws Update Task Force and has served on the Pro Registry Scientific Advisory Committee, Guidelines Advisory Committee, and has been a member of the faculty for many years for our annual Congress. Thank you, Dr. Gibson, for all your contributions as well to the society. So congratulations again to Drs. Meisner and Gibson for your achievements. We encourage all members to pursue this elite status in society. Thank you, Dean.
All right, thank you very much, Satish. Appreciate that. Moving on to our next report. Speaking of Kathy Gibson, our secretary will be presenting on her behalf. She's actually in surgery currently, which is great to hear that our members are working. So I'm going to go ahead and take over, and we'll get into her presentation on our board vote this year. All right, so as mentioned, we had our Board of Directors elections this year. We had the election for our president-elect for the 2022-2023 presidential term. And just for everybody's remembrance, we elect our president 2 years in advance. That gives them 2 years as president-elect, really to learn the ins and outs of the society and the role. And then 2 years from now in 2022, our new president will take over. We also had an election of our executive committee, as well as election of some at-large directors representing our membership across the many specialties, fields, and geographies of our membership. So our president-elect is Ms. Kathleen Gibson, born in Lafayette, Indiana. She currently resides in Bellevue, Washington, earned her medical degree at the University of Washington. She's a board-certified vascular surgeon, currently licensed to practice Washington and Hawaii, and as you just heard from Satish, has just become a fellow member of the society. She's been a member with the AVLS going all the way back to May 2005, heavily involved in a lot of different activities, committees, leadership opportunities as well. And as mentioned, Kathy will take over as president 2 years from now in the October meeting in 2022. Treasurer for the next term is, we've reelected our current treasurer, Stephen Dougherty. He'll continue to serve in this role on the executive committee. Born in Texas, currently lives in Clarksville, Tennessee. Medical degree from Emory, board certified general surgeon. Has been, we've got some microphone issues going on here. If I could have everybody mute their mics, that would be appreciated. And so Stephen, congratulations. Glad to be able to continue to work with you in this role as treasurer over the next couple years. And then new to the executive committee, Satish Vayavegula will be taking on the role of secretary. Born in India, resides in Illinois from the Chicago Medical School. And Satish, congratulations. Glad to have you on the executive committee as well. One of our new directors at large is Miss Zoe Deal. Dr. Deal's born in Providence, Rhode Island, lives in West Bloomfield, Michigan, earned her medical degree Michigan State, a general surgeon, diplomat of the AVLM, and practices medicine in Michigan and New York. Joined the AVLS in 2012 and is currently our chair of our member retention committee. Hopefully you're able to join last night's new member reception, and I got to see Zoe and her committee hard at work. Also joining the board is Kenneth Harper, born in Toccoa, Georgia, resides in Macon, Georgia, from the Medical College of Georgia, another general surgeon, and has been a member going way back now. In 1999, joined the AVLS in July. Currently serving as chair of a phlebectomy task force that has been addressing issues and reimbursement advocacy issues relating to phlebectomy surgeries, et cetera. So congratulations, Ken, and glad to have you as part of the group now. And our third election, new director at large, is Raghu Kalori. Raghu, also from India, resides in Dublin, Ohio. earned his medical degree at the Armed Forces Medical College, internal medicine and vascular medicine, currently licensed in Ohio. Also has been a member of the society for a long time, joining back in September 2005. Also of interest is Dr. Kalori is currently the president for the Society of Vascular Medicine. And so will be serving 2 roles over the next year as he continues to serve out his term as president. And we're grateful to have him also now involved in our society and on our board. Just to run down and let you know the entire board for 2021, Mark Meisner, who's president-elect, will be taking over as president at the end of this Congress. Just mentioned Kathleen Gibson as president-elect. Marlon Schul, our current president, who's finishing things out this year in the role of president, will be continuing to serve on the board as the immediate past president. The rest of our executive committee is just mentioned, Satish Vayavegula and Stephen Dougherty. Also on our board, Linda Antonucci, John Balabius, Stephen Dean, Zoe Deal, Steve Elias, Sergio Ginacini, Ken Harper, Raghu Kalori, Margaret Mann, who is also our chair of this year's annual Congress, Vineet Mishra, Christopher Pittman, and Ron Winokur. So you've got a great board of leaders, and very excited about the future of where we're headed and the team that we'll be working with. So from my seat as executive director, congratulations to all of you. We greatly appreciate the number of hours, time, dedication, the involvement that all of you have given the society and will continue to do so in leading us into the future. With that, we're going to turn things over, take a look at our treasurer's report. So I'd like to hand the control over, introduce Stephen Dougherty, who will take us through the treasurer's report.
Okay, here we go. Well, this is for the financial year, the fiscal year that ends on June 30th, 2020. And looking at all of the data that we'll show you, it's important that you understand how that fiscal year calendar works. See if I can get things out of my way so I can see the screen here. Okay. Well, our net revenue for this year that ended June 30th is down. That to a large extent is because Congress turned virtual, and so people have been delaying their registration. We expect to get most of our registrations here in the last few weeks prior to the meeting. Second, dues are down, and Dr. Vayavegula showed you those issues. Our expenses have been close to budget, but with that decreased revenue, which hit us very suddenly, we show a net loss of $399,000 for the year. We did obtain some loans. The Paycheck Protection Plan loan was for $202,000 through the Small Business Administration. We expect that to be forgiven over the next year. We also obtained a $150,000 loan through the SBA. It's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Start repaying that next spring, 2.75% interest over a 30-year payout. We're not thrilled about going into debt for anything, but that allowed us to meet our cash flow needs to keep us operational. So we had a cash flow loss of $47,000, though the real loss was $399,000, and we will have to pay back $150,000 of that loan. Well, our revenue in 2014 spiked. That was a result of the UIP conference, which we hosted in Boston in September 2013. And that set us up with substantial extra revenue, and we had some deficit years between 2014 and current, in which those revenues were basically spent to fund operations that the board of directors thought were important. There was a substantial reduction in revenue in 2017 and came back up in 2018 and has been reasonably stable since then until the last few months. And we're budgeting for revenue this year, which is more or less in line with last year. Well, I'm getting, there we go. So here's the membership dues. You saw Dr. Valle-Vega showing you this. We expect that membership dues revenue will improve considerably this year over last year, hopefully as people get over COVID. And with people registering for Congress, we're starting to see some of the revenue coming in now. So Congress in 2014 provided a lot of revenue for us. 2019 shows here was actually the 2018 Congress in November 2018. Provided us fairly good revenue, but it was down for 2020 in the Arizona meeting. That typically happens when we have meetings in the Southwest. We just don't have the membership attendance because of the distance and the cost of travel. We budgeted for considerably less revenue from Congress this year. As a virtual Congress, we lowered the registration fees significantly so that we could have 81 hours of CME for a very low registration fee for those who wish to use those hours by December 31st. Our total expenses for the upcoming year will be close to what they were in 2020. Some of these reflect the expenses at our meetings, the hotel and the food at the hotel and that sort of thing. And that was one of the big issues in Arizona. We had high expenses and lower registration, which hurt us. But we've been able to cut expenses since we're doing this virtual meeting, which we think will help us a great deal. Salaries you see here in 2018 were up considerably. We were going through 2017 and 2018 transition in executive director, temporary help, interim positions being filled, which was expensive. And we made the decision to move from California to Chicago. And that was an expensive process to get a new office suite up and running, and the things that had to happen in terms of the actual relocation of the office as well as staff transition issues. And we got those costs back down some. Also, at the end of 2018, we hired Director of Advocacy and Healthcare Policy, Robert White, and Director of Research. And those positions cost us some money, but they're really core to our mission and what we're doing. 2020, we had some unfilled positions to keep the cost down a little bit, and we're hoping that we're able to muster the resources this year to keep those positions filled. Our projected revenue comes from three main areas. The annual Congress is number one. We're really dependent on the Congress for an important part of our revenue, and we'll see how things go with Congress this year. We're very hopeful that with the lower cost of getting the CME, that we'll have a fairly substantial registration this year. The Foundation for Venous and Lymphatic Disease is really important to us. Your dollars that go to the FVLD are seen by industry as indicators of your interest in our specialty. And the more we can get our membership to participate, the more we can get industry to support us. But the reality is that many of the important programs that we have, we just flat couldn't do without FVLD support. And that's clearly true of advocacy, where I'm so involved. Our membership dues are 23% of revenue. And we need to get membership dues up by getting new members. And we do that by providing value to the members and making sure they understand that we're doing that. Continuing education is important as well, and that may well grow. So the 2021 budget is projected for $770,000 from the foundation. As long as the pledges to the foundation are met, we expect to get that. The annual Congress revenue is one of the big questions right now. We think we can do fairly well on continuing education this year as we all learn to do some of the remote learning. and we've budgeted $630,000 for membership dues revenue. If you look at non-personnel expenses, $100,000 of that figure is money that is reserved to go into a reserve fund for future operating deficits or special projects. We got to rebuild reserve, which had been depleted by years of important things, but nonetheless had been depleted. And there's another $130,000 in that number that actually is to pay down accounts receivables out there that began to develop several years ago, and we finally have that whittled down. So we're showing an operating profit projected at $4,000, but remember there's $100,000 going into reserves in this. If we could make this budget, the reality is, I don't know why it's going the wrong direction. Reality is we need growth in membership and membership retention. We need foundation support from our members in particular. And we need to expand participation in our educational offerings, the annual Congress, online education, regional symposia. All of the things we do, the research and education, but also the advocacy that are making a very real difference, as you'll hear later on, are funded by these dollars. And we've got to find the way to collect the dollars to do the things that are important to our mission. And if we can't do it, we simply have to start cutting some of our costs and cut some of the benefits that we really want to be able to provide our membership. We're doing so much more for our membership than ever before, but we need the dollars to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that report. Now we're going to move on to our education report, and I'd like to introduce Margaret Mann, who is chair of our Education Standing Committee. Margaret, handing the controls over to you.
Thank you. And as Stephen addressed, I think one of the core focus of AVLS is our education offerings. So I'm here to give you a recap of what we've done in the past year and also what's upcoming. So of course, we can't forget the amazing event by Steve Elias, 2019 Annual Congress in Phoenix. We had a very successful Congress that year, over 1,100 participants, 737 of them attendees, registered attendees, and multiple guests and exhibitors. About 28% of them were first-time attendees, and we also had 62% of them as physicians, and over 80 corporate exhibitors. Regional courses, we held one in February with phlebology review as well as sclerotherapy with our immersion lab for the first time. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to cancel our April meeting, but we were able to pivot. So pivot we did. We launched our sclerotherapy immersion course that was completely virtual in April. And to date, we've had about 36 participants, and we've had some really good feedback about the course. In addition, in August, we also held our completely virtual RPHS review course. This was pre-recorded with 3 hours of live stream session, question and answer with the faculty. And we had a really good turnout at this event as well. And then, of course, next week, we're going to have our virtual Congress. And I just want to thank everybody at AVLS for helping us get through this and putting on this amazing virtual meeting. In terms of upcoming programs, in April, we plan to have, hopefully by then, in person, phlebology review course, our sclerotherapy with our immersion lab again, and then our RPHS ultrasonography workshop. In August, we plan to have these other workshops, as you can see here. And one of the things we've actually had in planning even since 2018 was the idea of creating virtual reality courses where you wear these amazing goggles and you can kind of be in somebody's office and watch a physician do their procedure. So part of the goal is we're going to start developing procedures and recording of superficial venous disease procedures and deep venous techniques. We also plan to have our phlebology review course in an immersion course as well. We're also going to update some of the sclerotherapy course, and then of course our exciting development of a lymphedema review course. Upcoming 2021 Congress is going to be in Denver, chaired by the great RWK. And we plan going forward to make all of our events a hybrid so that people can come in person, but also that if there are virtual participants, they can also participate as well. And here are upcoming dates for future Congress. And of course, I want to point out in September 2023, we got our winning bid for UIP Congress, and that will be in Miami, and we're very excited for that. Thank you much.
Thank you, Margaret. Appreciate that. A lot of exciting things. And as you said, you know, a lot of firsts over the past year with the VR immersion, sclerotherapy course, and now virtual education and an entire virtual Congress. So a lot of challenges, and but I think good things are happening.
Absolutely.
Let me go ahead and introduce, we're going to hand things back over to Stephen Dougherty, who gets to wear many hats within the society. And Stephen is also the chair of our Healthcare Policy and Advocacy Standing Committee. And so he'll bring you some exciting updates on things that have been happening over the past.
Great, thank you. Well, healthcare policy and advocacy is a major part of our organization now. I don't have control for my slides. There we go. It's a major part of our organization now. We appreciate all the support we've had from the foundation and from our membership. 3 years ago, we developed the Healthcare Policy and Advocacy Committee and elevated that to be a key priority of our society, along with education and research. What does that really mean? Well, we advocate for fairer payment with Medicare and the private payers. We work to influence carrier policies to try to give our physicians as much flexibility to use their judgment to treat patients. And we work hard on trying to get established medical necessity criteria developed with various payers. That's very challenging, as you all can imagine. We've been engaged nationwide on venous and lymphatic medicine issues wherever we can do so. We engage the federal government through the various governmental entities to support the clinical domain in which we practice. Well, Healthcare Policy and Advocacy Committee is a board level committee. We set policy. We're empowered by the board to make decisions between board meetings regarding healthcare policy issues. But if you look at the group who are on this committee, these are all board members. They all are fulfilling very important roles within the society. And generally, we just work to figure out policy to agree on where we're going to go. And it's a very busy working group of board members. The operational level is essentially a subcommittee. It's the Healthcare Advocacy Committee. Chris Pittman, one of our board members, chairs that. Advocacy and the political realm is a very important part of his expertise as well. The vice chair is Vineet Mishra. Members include all of the Healthcare Policy Committee members, plus this group of 22 others. There are a lot of strong people in this group, and we have conference calls every month to review and discuss various issues that come up, to seek individuals within this group who can take on various tasks to come up with a finished product for our membership. It's important to know that we have some of the leadership of the American Venous Forum involved in this group, and our healthcare policy leadership also has conference call with American Venous Forum leadership every month after these meetings, so we can discuss issues and get on with action as much as possible as two societies working together. We have a group of senators, we call them, based on a long-term commitment to important projects. The AMA CPT editorial panel advisor is Satish Valyavegula. Michael Graves is the alternate. This is the group that writes the CPT codes in the language that you see in the CPT book. If it's not described well there, then you're not going to get paid for your work. The AMA RUC, the Resource-Based Relative Value Update Committee advisors, John Blevia, and Trip Todd has been his alternate. They're the ones who work under the close supervision of CMS to establish valuations for some of what we do and create the relative value units that are assigned to procedures. The AMA delegate is Chris Pittman. Vinny Mishra is the alternate to the House of Delegates. And then the IAC Vein Center Division representatives from the AVLS are Ken Wynn and Carl Fastabend. All of those require a lot of work. Some of the issues we'll review here. You'll be getting by mail, for those who registered up through a few days ago, a magazine with print with a lot more detail about many of these issues, and it will be available online next week, I understand. An important project was First Coast and Novitas. They're both owned by the same company. They have draft LCDs for superficial vein treatment, venous stenting, that were published last summer. We and other societies, including the AVF, responded with comments. We didn't have a lot of comments, frankly. They were fairly limited because their policy draft was actually pretty fair and reasonable. But that was because a lot of effort on the part of a lot of our membership in our advocacy leadership worked hard to help educate the medical directors and to discuss these issues with them and educate them, frankly. We're waiting on final publication of their policies, but we're hoping that they won't make any major changes to the policies after their comments. We recently sent a comment letter to FDA regarding a proposal which would limit availability of bulk compounded drugs like polydocanol in greater than 1% concentration. That's an issue that's come up. This policy, if it is enacted, would mean that you can't get polydocanol over 1% for anything. And the group did a lot of work to sort out the things for which higher concentration polydocanol might be valuable, and submitted that information to the FDA. We have an ongoing issue about the safety of room air for foam sclerotherapy, and the FDA's position that they took last year regarding that. We're not certain that's based on very good science. We had an issue with the Society of Diagnostic Medical Sonographers. They decided they were going to issue recommendations regarding disinfection of ultrasound transducers. And this was an ongoing project trying to convince them that their requirement for high-level disinfection, even for transducers that have been protected in a sleeve, was not reasonable or appropriate, nor was it supported by science. And finally, when they published their policy in July, they acceded to comments from us and from the American Venous Forum working together regarding this. And they accepted low-level disinfection for transducers for things like sclerotherapy and ultrasound-guided vascular procedures if the transducer is not contaminated during the procedure, meaning a sleeve on the transducer. So we think that's a major win, actually. Medicare payment's still an issue. We're waiting to see what the Medicare final rule says in November. We've commented regarding many of those issues. We have a phlebectomy task force which is working on proposals for new CPT codes to better describe phlebectomy procedures, since there's such variability in those. The reality is it'll take several years and support from a lot of stakeholders to make that happen. Other issues are narrow networks and venous credentialing. We have some payers out there who are choosing not to allow physicians of certain specialties to do vein procedures or to read vascular ultrasound. Most egregious one said general surgeons can't do vein procedures. And we don't have solutions for that because those are local and they have power to narrow their networks, but we're trying to provide support where we can. There's a very real payment threat to thermal codes CMS plans to cut considerably for the thermal ablation codes for 2021, 2022, based on their idea that the catheters and laser fibers are less expensive than many are paying for them. We've submitted invoices and argument that the values that CMS is referencing are not available to most practices. The E&M codes that are going to be better financially on January 1st were intended to pay more to physicians who do evaluation management services at the price of those who do procedures. It would account for about an 11% drop in Medicare conversion factor on January 1st. All of medicine is fighting this because it's a terrible time to create such a large drop in payment for various specialties. CMS has gotten a lot of comments on that. We'll see what they do. Coverage for new vein technologies is quite spotty, and we continue to work on those issues. A very big win that I think a lot of people have not really understood and appreciated is that the IAC Vein Center Division has accepted the AVLM deployment status as a pathway for physicians to be medical director or medical staff in accredited vein centers. In 2012, when we started the Vein Center Division, I cast the sole vote in favor of supporting AVLM deployment status for that purpose. And now enough has changed and it's been accepted enough that they actually got this accepted at the IAC level. I think that's a huge win. It's just incredible how much the attitude has changed regarding this. And it may not be universally supported, but it's just accepted by enough that this happened. Read more in the magazine that will be available to you next week. A lot more detail on that. But thank you all. We appreciate your support. If you're really interested in advocacy and willing to work hard and write well, the committee is always interested in finding people who can do those things. But we need people who are committed, who write well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. We're now going to move on to our research report and update. Turn things over to the chair of the standing committee, Mark Meisel.
Thank you. Well, welcome to everybody who's attending tonight. We really appreciate everybody taking time to participate in what's really a very important report of what's going on with our society. And I have the pleasure of presenting the research report, which really has three primary components that I'm going to talk about, and that's the PRO registry, the guidelines, and then some of the publications that I think we've been responsible for over the past year, which I think is just a start, and hopefully in the next few years we'll see even more. Well, the PRO registry continues to move along with Joe Jenkins as the chair. The migration to the PRO registry 2.0 with Dendrite is nearly complete. A few remaining practices remain to be included, but overall it's progressing, which will be I think a big advantage for using this data to really perform some meaningful research. And with that, the registry will be expanded to include more than just infrainguinal venous disease. We'll hopefully also be able to include deep venous and pelvic disease, as well as conservative therapy. And if you look at the number of patients, which I can't see because it's covered up by the block there, but you can see that in this, we're almost to 100,000 patients, which is huge, and far more than even the closest alternative registry, which is the SVS registry. We have a lot more patients than any other registry out there. We also have more data with it, in that our registry is not just procedural based, as is the SVS registry. It includes all patients presenting for vein care, including those who never go on to have a procedure, which I think is a huge advantage in both representing vein care in the US, but really providing a snapshot of the practitioners who are doing vein care in the US. And in contrast to the SVS registry, which is largely confined to vascular surgeons, I think the PRO registry really gives a broader snapshot of who is actually providing vein care in this country and how they're doing it, mostly in the office and not in the operating room, as some of the reports from the SVS registry have reported. So I think it's very exciting that we're virtually almost up and running on the PRO registry 2.0. If I can advance my slides here. As far as what kind of research is coming out of it, we've contracted with AI, who's going to help us with statistics and data analytics, which I think is a big move, that if people have projects that they're interested in undertaking, particularly if they fit with our research priorities, we do have the infrastructure available now to manage that. We're targeting at least 10 publications a year out of the registry. Some of the initial projects that you'll see coming out over the next year are some of the questions that our industry partners have particularly asked regarding their technology, particularly VenaSeal, Clarivain, and Verathena. And unfortunately, I can't see the chairs because it's covered by the panel, but I think Willie Chi will be leading the VenaSeal, Kathleen Gibson, the Clarivain, and then we'll also be looking at Verathena. The guidelines are progressing reasonably well. The SVP classification instrument for pelvic venous disorders is completely finished. It's the final manuscript is done. It's been endorsed so far by 14 international societies, including some very important societies such as SIR, the Society for Vascular Surgery, the American Venous Forum, the European Society of Interventional Radiology, the European Venous Forum, the Canadian Society of Phlebology. Virtually all of the major phlebology societies around the world have endorsed this. This was, if anybody will recall, it's a very multidisciplinary effort that includes both phlebologists as well as surgeons, interventional radiologists, and obstetrics and gynecologists. And hopefully that's going to be one of the big things that moves this field forward, is getting the buy-in of our gynecology colleagues regarding the significance of pelvic venous disorders and how to classify them. Really, the only thing that's awaiting publication right now is endorsement by the final group, which is the International Pelvic Pain Society, which I think is really critical to the instrument, which is why we've waited for it, because having the gynecologist buy into this is really, really important. Their board is supposed to meet within the next week, and it's been in the hands of their board for about 6 weeks now. So hopefully that will be forthcoming, and then we'll immediately submit it. One of the nice things about this instrument is that it is a very complicated instrument, as are pelvic venous disorders. And Tony Gasparis has done a really nice job of working with some developers to develop an app for both the iPhone and the Android platforms. And the app for this will be released shortly after its publication, and it will be AVLS branded, which will hopefully go towards the name recognition of the AVLS with all of these multidisciplinary societies. As far as the remainder of the guidelines go, the C2 guidelines, which is a joint project with the SVS and the AVF, the meta-analysis is now completed for that, was completed sometime over the summer. And hopefully within the next quarter or so, we will start to see the guidelines being developed out of that. Realistically, I suspect that that's a year from publication. For chronic venous obstruction and pelvic venous reflux, we've established the committees, we've developed the PRO questions and done the initial literature review. The next step will be to do meta-analysis on both of these. And for all of 3 of these guidelines, after looking at the data, supplanting them, I suspect we're going to have to go with a little bit of different process than just purely evidence-based guidelines, given the fact that, for example, chronic venous obstruction, the evidence base to support that just isn't really that great. So one of the things that we're looking at going with this is more of a RAND UCLA process. which essentially brings a scientific basis to consensus documents. It will be very literature-based and evidence-based, but allows a bit more expert opinion in that. I've started just initial contact with a RAND UCLA expert who is Karen Wu at UCLA, and just talking about who we can get as a methodological expert to help us with these now that we have the questions developed and moving on. And hopefully we can start incorporating that RAND UCLA process into the guidelines in the next 2 or 3 months. The next step is going to be to get the lymphedema guidelines committee going on developing the questions, and then moving on to the literature review. And hopefully by then we'll have a methodological expert to help us with the RAND UCLA project. So I think it's a very exciting time as far as the research that's being produced by the AVLS. If anybody who's on the call would want to participate in any of these, I really welcome your participation. Please contact me or any other member of the board of directors, and we'll get you involved in these things. Thanks very much for your attention and joining tonight, and I look forward to talking with everyone again next week. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. And now moving on, we'll switch gears. Going to turn things over to Neil Kilnani to give us an update on ABVLM and what's the latest, greatest going on there. Neil, coming your way.
Hear me? Okay, good. Well, thank you very much for having me participate in the business meeting, and congratulations on what looks to be a really exciting program for the AVLS this year. What I'm going to do is just give you an update as to what's been going on at the American Board of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine over the last 12 months or so. And let me get things moving over. So just as a reminder of the mission of the American Board of Venous and Lymphatic Board of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine is to serve the public and medical profession by establishing standards for venous and lymphatic medicine physicians to allow them to demonstrate their skills and their experience for the benefit of our professional and lay public. At the same time, and I'm going to move something here. The goal is to improve the standards of care. That's through both establishing standards for what constitutes an adequate physician, but also what the training requirements should be for physicians coming up through a training pathway to ultimately become a venous and lymphatic medicine. And the ultimate goal for us is to establish the venous and lymphatic medicine profession as an AVMS recognized subspecialty. So with that in mind, here's what's been accomplished in the last year. We're now up to 856 diplomates. That's pretty impressive. It's a good fraction of, if you will, of our American Vein and Lymphatic Society, I suspect, and then we have members from other societies who aren't from the AVLS as well. We have 10 diplomates who are board eligible and just waiting to go through the process, and we're adding about 30 to 40 new diplomats per year. Here's the breakdown. It looks fairly similar to what you saw with the AVLS in terms of its membership. This is by their primary specialty. Everybody had to have been AVMS certified at one point in some primary specialty. If we look at our diplomats or diplomates by region, we notice we're fairly well spread out through the 50 United States, and we have a reasonable presence in Canada as well. If we try to look at a heat map of the United States, the darker the color, the more diplomates there are per population. We'll notice that certain parts of the country are pretty dark, and there's a large fraction of the diplomates there. But other parts of the country, we're sort of lacking a bit in terms of diplomates. So that gives an opportunity, or gives an idea of some opportunities that may exist for some of our potential diplomats in terms of distinguishing themselves from their peers. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our class of 2019. We have about 30 to 40, I forget the exact number, of diplomates that joined us this year. Generally, this is the time where we have our diplomates stand up at our business meeting, and we recognize their accomplishments through a round of applause. So I'd like to ask all our attendees to do so, and I'll just sort of add to that a little bit here on this side, just to try to recognize them. And here are, I'll go through some of the names and give you a chance to look at the names and the faces. And when you get a chance to meet some of these individuals, please give them congratulations. The process of becoming certified by the American Board of Venous Lymphatic Medicine is self-explanatory. On the website, you can go to www.avvlm.org and apply online. You can also, as a patient or as a provider, identify physicians. And there are a number of elements of the certification process. For those of you who have gone through it, you know it well, but for others, there are different pathways. And the most common pathway to do this is the experience pathway, which involves an ABMS board certification at some point, and then some case logs, proof of your licensure, CME requirements, and then a certification exam. COVID has certainly affected our schedule at the ABVLM in terms of delivering that CME or that certification exam. And so you will see that we were able to move along in partnership with Pearson VUE testing centers, who deliver our tests to our potential diplomates, move that exam to a later period in 2020. But we're going to take that and move permanently our exam to the August through September slot. And this is where we intend the exam to be for next year. And this is going to be very helpful as we start to recruit more and more candidates who are completing residency and fellowship training programs, including phlebology and venous and lymphatic medicine fellowships. Our online learning assessment program is doing extremely well, and I think it's extremely well received. Certainly, I participate in this program, and I participate in a program in my primary specialty, and I find the content in this in the OLAs from the Venous Lymphatic Board very educational. And here's an example of a question and the appropriate answer. These get emailed to you. And then this is the kind of detail that you can get. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less, but you get really good content in terms of helping you understand what the correct answer is and why the other answers were incorrect. And generally, there are going to be references and links to those references that allow you to go to those papers and read the primary source materials that were cited by the writers. And so this has been educational. These exam questions are fairly challenging, and they're meant to challenge you, but they're educational, and it sort of underscores the continuous learning philosophy that most boards have taken, and the American Board of Venous Lymphatic is no exception. I'd like to welcome two new board members. Carl, who you've heard about already, Carl Fasteben, is a new board member. He is the director who represents the American Vein and Lymphatic Society. He's a member of a number of committees on those societies, and he's also an interventional cardiologist, a group that has been increasingly embracing venous care, and a group that we would like to engage more in terms of providing them resources to allow them to demonstrate their skills and experience. And another new director is John Fish. John is a vascular medicine physician who's been very active in ABVLM activities already. He's been a very active member of our item writing committee for the certification exam. And he is actually, as you'll see in a moment, one of the program directors of one of the active venous lymphatic medicine fellowships that are approved by the ABVLM. So obviously, the ABVLM is not like many organizations, it's not a single person or single small group of people, but it represents a large number of people who are participating to make our projects come to fruition. And I thought this diagram was really nice until I recognized that it had the obligatory guy at the top. So I took a little artistic liberty there, and I hope you guys don't mind my drawing of a different person who is at the top. Nonetheless, we have a number of committees. We've got an education committee that's headed by Teresa Carmen and a really good group. We've got a fellowship and accreditation committee headed by Mark Meisner and a very strong group. A fellowship development committee, an item writing committee, which works really hard. Of course, you'd recognize why we couldn't share the names, but please express thanks to those who behind the scenes are doing a lot of work. And Susan Wazen leads our marketing and communication committee with a very strong group of people. These committees do work, and as an example, here's something that was put out by the Fellowship Development Committee, a subcommittee of that, a task force trying to recruit people into fellowships. And they put together a course on what a career in venous disease looks like as a webinar, which was really well attended. And so I'd like to thank Vineet, Tony Gasparis, Ron Winokur, and the rest of the group here who worked really hard, along with Chris Freed, our executive director, to put this program on. One of the missions of one of the tactics used to try to help get us toward an AVMS recognized specialty status is to develop venous and lymphatic medicine fellowships. Robust, healthy subspecialties have dedicated active training programs. And so in 2014, this became an important part of a goal of our organization. And so as of date, we have these 5 active programs or continuing programs with Tony Gasparis, Peter Pappas, John Fish, and Marcus Stanbro leading programs at these facilities. We have 10 active training programs. Something that we're very excited now about is we're just going to be coming online with a new venous lymphatic medicine program at Mass General Hospital, led by Dr. Julianne Stoughton, who's our treasurer. And that will be hopefully coming online this year. The fellow has been identified. It's going to be a vascular surgery fellow who's going to take a year off to concentrate in venous and lymphatic medicine with an ultimate goal of having a career that focuses in that. So congratulations to all of our program directors, and welcome, Julie, to the Club of Program Directors. And I hope we can expand this group as time moves on. As Steve already pointed out earlier, we did get recognition from the Intersocietal Association or Intersocietal Accreditation Commission for Vein Centers. The American Board of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine certification is now considered one pathway toward demonstrating the requisite training and experience to become a medical director or a medical staff physician in an IAC accredited vein program. So this is great. Recognition is growing. With that, I'd like to conclude by just pointing out that the staff of the American Board of Venous Lymphatic Medicine are always available for any questions and support. Certainly our local Jedi is Chris Freed. Chris is, knows everything, has been around for a long time, perhaps not as long as the gentleman in the screen here, Yoda, but certainly knows his way around in terms of accreditation and in terms of the AVVLM. And then his partner, Dina, is also extremely helpful should you have any program-related issues. And I'd like to invite you to participate or at least join Chris and or Dina at the AVLS booth in the virtual meeting area. Recognize that there is a giveaway, and I'm going to tip off that the giveaway is a free application for the members who or the visitors who essentially stuffed the jar with their names, and that's a nice value for somebody who's considering joining the process. So share that information with whomever you can to encourage more participation. Dean, that's the end of my presentation. And again, thank you to the AVLS for giving me the opportunity to talk about the AVVLM.
Thank you very much, Neil. Appreciate that. We're going to move on down to one of our major investment projects and want to turn things over to Margaret Mann, who is going to give us an update on the Improving Wisely project and phase 2 that we're entering.
Hey guys, let me get my screen shared. All right, so this is absolutely hot off the press. I just got all the results 2 days ago, so my apologies if I have not had a lot of time to look this over, but I'm excited to share this with you. So in 2018, the AVLS board approved Improving Wisely project in conjunction with Johns Hopkins University research team. What we wanted to do was to establish baseline data on physician practice pattern, particularly regarding how many average thermal ablations are performed per patient. So what we did was we first used 2017 Medicare claims data, and we looked at all NPIs with more than 10 thermal ablations, and we established a baseline per physician of how many ablations were performed per patient. We also, in addition to this, mailed out confidential data report to each NPI in January and February of 2019. So next is an example of that report that you may have already received. And you'll see it basically says venous thermal ablation procedures per patient. And within each person's, which are personalized report, it shows you what your average is in comparison to national average. And the benchmark we found was the mean average ablation was 1.9, one standard deviation was 2.6, and two standard deviation was 3.4. So anybody above 3.4, we considered them outliers. And there were about 106 physicians in that group. So our fundamental question was whether there will be changes in treatment patterns by utilizing these reports. So this is hot off the press. We just compared 2017 data to 2019. And as you can see in red is the mean number of ablation of the outlying physician. So in 2017, you can see, let's see if I can get my little pointy thing. Let's do swap. There we go. In 2017, can you guys see that? I don't know. In 2017, we started with 4.34 as the mean ablation for outlying physician. And you can see in 2019, it dropped to 3.63. And those who were inline physician, there was really not a change in their pattern. Now I can't move forward. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Then we also looked at median, and you can see also in the same way, there was a reduction in the number of ablation comparing outlying physician. And then an inline physician, everyone pretty much was right at the average. This is another neat graph to show you those who are inlier versus outlier. So on the left, you can see 2017, and there were 1,444 inliers. And then those outliers, there were 45. What's interesting to note is that those who were outliers in 2017, about 47 of them became inliers in 2019. So we do think that there has been a change based upon our report or whatever we're doing, but we're hoping that our report was one of the reasons why people have reduced their ablation procedures. So phase 2, we did include all, we're looking into data including all non-thermal ablation codes as well. So the goal part of it is to break that down to see if it's just a reduction in thermal ablation or if it's also non-thermal ablation codes and whether certain technology influence the ablation rate. Our goal is to provide individual provider reports. This will be distributed in January 2021, and we'll do some analytical work, and then our target publication will be mid-2021. That's it. And I just want to thank everyone at AVLS, and particularly the foundation for supporting this project. I think this and many of the other projects of AVLS is what really makes us special. Our goal is not only to educate, but to actually influence how practice pattern is and how we treat our patients. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Margaret. And that's a great lead in with the thank you to the Foundation for Venous and Lymphatic Diseases. We're now going to go back to Dr. Neil Kilnani, who is chairman of the foundation, so he can provide us all with an update on the activities and events that are going on at the foundation this year.
Well, thank you again for the invitation to participate in a different role, and congratulations, Margaret, on that data. That's very exciting to see, and I look forward to seeing some more about that later, particularly as a potential funder of further projects. You know, I think our 2020 foundation challenges this year were no surprise. You know, we wanted to make sure that we could keep the pledges that we had worked so hard over the last 2-3 years to garner, to make sure that we can meet the commitments that we as the foundation had made to the college in terms of providing grants to support such great projects as Margaret just presented. And I'm extremely proud to say that we were COVID busters this year. We, well, I shouldn't say just we, the foundation, we really represent our donors, and those donors are corporate donors as well as our personal donors. 100% of pledge support was achieved despite pandemic concerns. So once again, this is where we usually have applause, and I'd like to thank our donors, and I'd like to thank particularly our corporate donors who trust us and have invested in us to try to address common problems and common issues in our society. My dog didn't like that too much. We had a couple of postponements, but otherwise our pledges are all honored, and that's also true for our physician pledges as well. There were no write-offs due to the pandemic. In terms of our total revenue, as a foundation, you can see the numbers there and our total expenses. So our revenue over expense of a reasonable amount. Note where the money from the foundation goes. Almost 75% of it goes directly to grants for projects. And as to date, all of those projects are American venous and lymphatic, or American vein and lymphatic medicine projects. There's a very small operational expense and a very small developmental expense when you compare this to other nonprofits. So we're doing an extremely good job, and we're directing the funds where they need to go. When we look at where those grants had gone to, overwhelmingly it goes to projects that are research. Research would be considered what Margaret has talked about, and also what Mark Meisner talked about. We're still supporting education very robustly, and the advocacy issues or advocacy elements that Stephen Dougherty had described. This is where a good portion of the funding for all of these projects are coming from. This is what's driving the productivity of the American Vein and Lymphatic Society. It's really, you know, as somebody who's the outgoing board member this year from the American Vein and Lymphatic Society, I'm very excited to see the momentum that's building in terms of all of these core issues and core projects, and I expect to see more in the years to come. Also, as the American Board of Venous and Lymphatic Medicine president, I'm very excited to see the support that the foundation is able to continue to provide to nurturing fellowships in that area. The objectives for the foundation development team this year are going to include a transition to a new chair. So the outgoing president of the society will become the incoming president of the foundation, and if his track record in terms of what he has been able to accomplish in his 2 years as president of the society lead us to predict how he will do as chair of the foundation. I think we're, as a foundation, going to be in good hands. We're certainly going to reinvigorate our annual appeal efforts, and that's both for corporate prospects, particularly new corporate prospects, and also to continue to discuss the value of contributing to the foundation with our membership. And we're also going to encourage investment in immersive educational programs. We've learned a lot about what we can accomplish through the pandemic from remote learning, and I think we're going to continue to appeal for funding directly from potential donors, but we also are going to use grant sources that are already allocated to education to directly support some of the production of the materials that could be used for immersive technology. I look forward to seeing the immersive technology applied to deep vein procedures, and I really do think that's going to be an outstanding way to educate people in terms of the nuances of those procedures. And also we're going to be focusing in on our annual meeting next year in the Denver area. Our annual Congress events this year to fundraise include a yoga event, which I strongly recommend everybody attend at 9 in the morning next Thursday, I believe. And then there's going to be a fun run and walk, which is going to be led by Mel Rosenblatt's wife and daughter. We're going to try to involve as many people virtually throughout the United States and internationally to participate in this. And we've already raised $18,000 for our foundation in that regard. When it comes to the annual Congress in the Denver area in 2021, we'll be in Aurora, where we're going to have our golf outing. And I wanted to put Marlon and Dean and all the other, John Cody and all the other big golfers out there, Tom from Juzo, that I learned how you can get to become a really good golfer very quickly. And so I've been, planning out the next year, and you can anticipate some competition next year. So start looking over your shoulder. And I look forward to participating in that golf tournament there, particularly at the high altitude. Finally, we'll have a reprise of our expedition again in the Colorado mountain area. We'll have a silent auction and again a fun run and walk. Future development focuses for 2021, a feasibility study for another capital campaign if we feel it's necessary at the end of New Horizons. I think the cycle of giving is continuous, and we need to be planning ahead for the future so that there's no gaps in our ability to support the mission of the society. But I think what we need to do in addition to taking those donations is to provide value back to everybody, our membership and to our who are donating, as well as to our corporate partners who are donating, and demonstrate that value in terms of successful projects and completion of some of the things that we've proposed. So it's work for all of us. And planning the annual meeting in 2022 is going to begin, and I'm looking forward to having a meeting at one of my favorite cities for meetings, New Orleans, a place where I had my honeymoon. So I'm sorry we're virtual with you guys, everybody, this year. It would have been nice to be in person. It would have been nice to be in person to thank our donors, as well as our AVLS diplomates. So again, another virtual thank you very much from the members of the foundation to the college for doing, and the society for doing its part in moving the mission forward, and to our donors, both corporate and non-corporate donors, for helping support us. Dean, that concludes my remarks for the foundation. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Neil. And I think before next year's golf outing, we're definitely going to have a testing protocol put in place. Looks like some human growth hormones or something's been part of your diet through this pandemic. So, but looking forward to it. So thank you very much. Next on our agenda, I want to go back to Mark Meisner, our current president-elect and incoming president, to briefly mention a new task force, some areas that we want to take a look at with the society moving forward. So Mark, I'm going to turn the screen back over to you if you have anything you need to put up, but all yours.
I'll talk about two task forces because I think there's two important ones. The most recent one is the venous leg ulcer task force. That was a concept of Marlon's and sort of builds on Marlon's presidential address last year about ulcer treatment and how many of our patients that we see languish for long periods of time in wound care centers with their primary care physicians without recognizing that we have something to offer those patients, and probably amongst the most important things that we do offer those patients. So with that, Marlon has put together a venous leg ulcer task force that is also going to involve the American Venous Forum, and I think is probably one of the most important initiatives that we'll have going forward next year. The other task force that I think wasn't on the agenda that I will talk a little bit about is the phlebectomy task force. And I would use that just as a example of why everyone needs to be involved in this society. The phlebectomy task force came to be last year after a couple of members were at the meeting, and really brought up the point that the devaluation of the phlebectomy codes was really hurting their practices, and that's one of the most important things that we could do is to work towards at least a long-term solution to the devaluation of the phlebectomy codes. And with that, started a phlebectomy task force that's had a couple of meetings right now. And there have been some very innovative suggestions of how to perhaps approach the issue of phlebectomy, perhaps with not so much revaluing the codes, but redefining the codes in a number of ways. And hopefully we'll start to see some things come to fruition from that. So I think these two task forces, this venous leg ulcer task force, which really goes to the problem of underutilization of our efforts, as Marlon discussed last year in the annual meeting, but also the phlebectomy task force. And I would suggest anybody who's on our webinar tonight who wants to be involved in any of these things, number one, mention it to somebody, become involved. But number two, I think these both of these task forces are really suggestions of how the input of our members is really quite important to what we do going forward. This is your society, and it's going to be directed by what people think are important to their practices and to their patients. So please feel free to contact any of us with ideas that you have about anything that's important to your practice.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Well, Marlon, that concludes the agenda, all the reports that we have from our various standing committees, different things going on. So I'll turn it back over to you to kind of close things out, summarize the evening, and take us out of here.
Thank you, Dean, and thank you, all of you who have signed on tonight to watch this business meeting. And I have to reflect on that. You just heard fabulous reviews of the activities that this society has done over the last year. There is no reason that this report needs to take long. I really do need to thank our executive director, our AVLS headquarters, and our panelists this evening, as well as the fellow board members for their dedication to the society, to our members, and for their major contributions this year. Let's not fool ourselves a bit, though, about COVID-19. If someone would have told me this was going to happen a year ago, I would have dismissed it. In fact, I completely dismissed crazy. But nonetheless, here we are. But despite COVID and all the direct and indirect effects to our members, our patients, our industry, it affected everybody. This society never stopped working, as you can see tonight, to bring value to its membership. Membership's the lifeblood of our society. I'm pleased to report that we've got widespread committee engagement throughout the society. And if you're a new member and not involved, please get engaged. If you're an established member and not involved, ask yourself, what do you think makes the most sense? Everybody has talents. There are a lot of different committees, whether it's advocacy, education, membership, or research, and you've got to have something that interests you, and we would be happy to engage. I think you've heard tonight that AVLS is the leader in venous lymphatic space. Whether it's education and innovation education, research with the report that Mark Meisner had in the largest registry right now in the world for patients with superficial venous reflux. And advocacy, do I need to say more? Who is doing more in advocacy? And bottom line, this society is the one that's being looked at to lead when it comes to venous and lymphatic disorders. I would encourage you to remember Wednesday night, October 14th at 7 p.m. We have a dedicated advocacy session. And in closing, I just want us to recognize that the society lives to serve its members and requires membership to fund many of the activities you've heard about this evening. Let's embrace the virtual Congress and the social activities. Let's celebrate how far we've come despite the hurdles this year. Please get engaged, meet other members, meet leaders, get involved. If you're not a member after this meeting, I need to know why. Who's doing more to support you in your practice? By all means, also, thanks to Juzo. And please visit the vendors. the platform that this virtual Congress on is very dynamic, and it's actually quite useful. There are ways to set up meetings, and bottom line is that there's all kinds of opportunity for this meeting. So thank you for attending the business of a great meeting. Thank you.